Hello and welcome to all the Hylians out there. I'm Joe, and I've got a new video for you all. In a few weeks, it's going to be the 7th and 8th. And typically that's Howard Days, which is quite the event for all lovers of all things Robert E. Howard, or Two Gun Bob, as many also like to call him. Now, Howard was a magnificent writer who has engraved his name in literature and has proven himself to be something of America, or Texas, at least J.R.R. Tolkien, which is no mean feat. His contributions to literature are many, but most of all, he helped to create and shape the genre we now call fantasy, and even that of the subgenre of sword and sorcery. When truth is, Howard wrote primarily in an adventure novel mythological mode, one that could, with regards to the Hour of the Dragon, almost be called epic fantasy, if we were to classify it by the later genre names and subgenres of today. All of that aside, it is an interesting fact that Howard threw in, just as Tolkien did, ancient dungeons and ruins and an extensive amount of history to each one of them. This was to become a staple within the genre, with Zelda being one of the most notable for adapting this to its various entries. Zelda's roots within the genre began more as an elf boy running around chopping moblins, pigmen, down, with the hero having to rescue the Princess Zelda. Later in 1991, there was a history and mythology added to the mythos of Hyrule, with Link now having to battle not simply against moblins, but possessed guards, battle in a dark world, and also battle his way through dungeons and crack their puzzles. This latter detail has remained, for the most part, a staple, with the question of the roots to this undeniably Howardian idea remains questionable if Miyamoto Shigeru even read Hour of the Dragon or the other great Howard stories. But what is undeniable is that the puzzle dungeons and history of Hyrule derive much more from the sword and sorcery side of things than any other. The question thus remains, is Zelda a sword and sorcery universe? Now, most characterize the subgenre as being only for human-only fantasy stories, but I disagree. Zelda has much more in common with that branch of the genre than any other. Sword and sorcery is described by Google as a genre of fiction characterized by heroic adventures and elements of fantasy. Under this header, Zelda falls under sword and sorcery umbrella. Another description that's been used for this genre is that it must be dark. But this isn't necessarily true, as there are sword and sorcery stories that are pretty cheerful, or lacking in the sort of grimdark elements most commonly associated with it. That said, Zelda itself can get pretty dark when one considers the likes of Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and even Twilight Princess. These stories are definitely tinged with elements of horror, especially the latter two, which are quite different in tone and themes from the first two entries in the Zelda mythos. The main premise of Zelda, though, is to sword slashing, ruin exploration, as mentioned, and the rescue of the princess. So, out of the three integral details or pillars, rather constitute sword and sorcery, Zelda has the sword slashing and ruins exploration. As to rescuing Lady Fair, there's plenty of that. In every Zelda game, or almost every game, Zelda appears as a damsel, and you have to rescue her. It is one of the most time-honored traditions, with Zelda never really exerting herself, as might say Valeria or Eowyn. But on the other hand, it is necessary for Zelda to be in danger, as it usually is part of the inciting force to the plot. And honestly, her characterization is simply usually quite interesting. Good examples of interesting Princess Zeldas can be found in the Link to the Past comic. There's also Ocarina of Time, where she's arguably the primary one behind the stratagem to stop Ganondorf from claiming the treasures necessary to getting into the sacred realm. Sure, it screws up, but that's kind of more on Link, who fails to pay heed to his surroundings. With that said, she and Link recover in the second half of the game and manage to almost completely outsmart and outmuscle Ganon. That said, there is an element of prudishness to Zelda, as the princess is never depicted in the sort of outfit one might see Sia depicted in. This is a conscious choice by Miyamoto and his staff, as they are aware that Zelda's appeal lies not in being a sex icon, but rather as the powerful goddess that Joseph Campbell speaks of. Princess Zelda is the divine feminine, the giver of the female half to Link's utterly masculine element, so that the two directly complement each other. Naturally, Ganondorf is the darker shadow to Link's light, so that it is the story from a psychological point of view, a battle between the good and evil within Link's soul for the prize, which is the Lady Fair as represented by Zelda, the Triforce naturally being the great boon. All this can be borne in mind when playing Zelda, a universe that, while perhaps dosed, if ever so slightly, with themes and ideas from Sword and Sorcery, is also touched by other fantasy subgenres. There's an element of mystery to some Zelda stories. There's obviously ideas of exploration of the medieval and also of old fairy stories, amongst others. The most important thing with this mythos is to simply enjoy the history, enjoy the fun, and to have a good time, though. So I hope you all enjoyed this video and that you won't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button. And also, I have to let you all know, we're planning a crowdfund for a $300 anthology magazine of sorts on June 1st. So I do hope you all will be willing to, even if it's just $10, dole some out. And even if not, you'll be willing to spread the news when it comes out about this crowdfund, which is going to be for a Sword and Sorcery and epic fantasy set of stories that I'm helping to edit. So do stay tuned for that, and for our next Zelda video, which will hopefully be out in a week or two. So until next time, do take care.